Now Luke's here. Luke's back.
Are
Look
you
at that.
guys talking about anything?
Talking about the scriptures.
Cool. Nice to see you, Manuel. How are you?
Doing good. How about you, Luke?
I'm well. Just had a crazy call. Well, not that unusual. What does crazy even mean anymore when every call has that kind of thing in it? We've redefined that word after having the number of calls we've had. Now crazy is normal, but someday we'll have far more calls with, and we'll cover a lot more content that you guys have never heard before on a lot of different subjects.
You think so?
Oh, yes. We will hear all
I think
kinds.
we've talked about everything.
Oh, no. We'll hear crazy things we've never heard before.
Heresies are being invented each year. No, I think.
Like, yeah, like that one time that guy came up to me talking about the Mother of God and how he could prove it through the Old Testament. I never heard such a thing before until that day.
If only all the church fathers were smart enough to figure that out. But they just
Oh yeah,
if only they could have read the Bible in Greek, because these guys always bring up the Greek. Do you know what karakame or karakame or whatever your Greek word is? Charis, grace, full of grace. Do you know what full of grace means in the Greek? It means sinless. Wow. Amazing that you figured that out from going to the Greek, but none of the church fathers could read Greek. It's a great tragedy. By the way, even if that
Greek
word,
tragedy.
even if it meant sinless, as they say, you know that it still wouldn't prove anything, because we're all sinless when we're baptized, you see. Their idea is that she's full of grace, and we wouldn't deny that Mary is full of grace. I wouldn't even deny that she was sinless or cleansed of all of her sins at the moment Christ dwelled in her. I wouldn't doubt that. I accept that. But I don't think she was sinless for her whole life before that, and I don't think she was sinless after that, especially considering the church fathers say after Jesus was born, she disbelieved in him and sinned. And the scriptures themselves make it very clear that she didn't think Jesus was the Son of God, because of the fact that he says, "Didn't you know I had to be in my Father's house?" And it says, and she did not understand what he meant. That's about the most basic thing you could understand about Jesus' incarnation, or about Jesus in general, that he is the Son of God. But she did not understand. So contrary to what they say, Mary was not fully educated and fully knowledgeable for a while. Peter made stronger confessions of faith than Mary did. Mary wasn't the first person to say, "You're the Christ, the Son of God."
I do think, though, that the worst things she ever did is just what's said there in the New Testament. And beyond that, she probably really didn't do anything else, like, aside from some very minor things.
Well, we don't know. I think what we do know is enough.
We don't know, but I think it's good to think that way. I don't think I don't want to give the wrong impression to everybody that we just have some horrible view of Mary. I think that Mary is probably like out of all of the women that have ever lived is like one of the very best women of all time, one of the best like people in general of all time.
The best.
And
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I would say that,
I
the best
so like
woman.
we definitely, and I know you completely agree with that, Luke, but we should just say that. I mean, we don't want to give the wrong impression or anything like that, as if Mary was just constantly always sinning or something like that. I think in the long run, she lived a very respectable, tempered life, a very good life.
Yes, I found I was reading Prudentius, another guy. He lives in the late 300s, early 400s. Found some great quotes from him on a few different subjects: incense, icons. And one of the things I found a quote from him on that I haven't found anywhere online is on Mary. Look, I've got a couple quotes on Mary from Prudentius. He talks about how human beings sin. He says he sins because he too was created, not begotten. How he was created. Oh, he's talking about Satan here, that he's a created angel. How he sins, or how he was created only by the Lord, his creator, knows. Enough for me is to believe that he was created Only the author of the world is free from the stain of sin, God unbegotten and begotten, the Father, and he that was born of the Father. He alone is exempt from stern punishment, lives unassailed, and knows no bitterness. And then again, Prudentius, again, this is a quite famous church father in the 400s. He says, from these torments Christ sets us free, for he alone had a mother immaculate and wore a sinless body. So he wore a sinless body. And look, in the same sentence, he calls Mary immaculate. We know what immaculate means. It means she was pure sexually. All the church fathers say that's what it means. They say that all virgins who are pure in body and soul, as in they have not committed sexual immorality either in their thoughts or in their body, they are all immaculate. Church fathers say that. So Mary is immaculate, and yet Jesus alone wore a sinless body. He says that Jesus owed no debt to punishment, being undefiled, without sin, free from all besmirching of fault. And he says the reason why is because death is nurtured on sin, and he who has no sin annihilates death, because it is exhausted through the very want of what it feeds on. So was death annihilated in the body of Christ our Lord. So was it destroyed, being withered by want of its accustomed food. Reverence, therefore, the divinity that alone is sinless. I think that's very clear. And if anybody says, well, that's not clear enough, I'd say, do you believe all of humanity has sinned except for Jesus and Mary? And they'd say, yeah. And we say, so you would make an exception for Mary? And they'd say, yeah. We'd say, okay. Well, then you do not believe that Jesus alone is sinless. You believe Jesus and Mary alone are sinless. So you would make an extra exception. You know, the church fathers even use that word, exception, without exception. With the exception of the one mediator, Jesus. So yeah, there's only one exception. Clement of Alexandria says, I know of no one among men who is perfect in all things at once, as long as he is still human. The only exception is he alone who clothed himself with humanity for us. Anyway, I will not take up our time. We had an interesting call. It's just so sad when people are just stuck on the basics. When will you move on from the basics? When will you get past your personal weirdities and just long for the truth?
Hey, Luke, can I ask something real quick?
Yes, Evan.
I just wanted to ask. I just came onto the call just a couple minutes ago, so I don't know the whole story, but I wanted to ask, what sins did Mary actually commit, and do we know if she repented of them?
Have you had the time to listen to our calls, Evan? We have had so many calls on that subject.
I don't think I've listened to the call on this subject.
Well, we've had maybe 3 in the main playlist, and then a lot of debates with the Cathodocs about this subject, so I can send you some links. But
Yeah, please do.
Mary committed a few sins mentioned in the New Testament. The biggest one being, well, aside from falling away, just like all the other apostles did when Jesus was crucified, aside from that stumbling, she and Jesus' brothers called Jesus insane, which was a sin. They said he is out of his mind. And it says that they went to take custody of him, but that's not what it says in the Greek. It's the word seize, by force. They went to go seize him because they were saying he was out of his mind.
Oh.
And then when they showed up, Jesus said, or somebody said, hey, your mother and your brothers are here. And he said, who are my mother and my brothers? And he pointed to those disciples who were listening, and he said, behold, my brother and sister and mother. Whoever does the will of my Father, he is my brother and sister and mother.
He did say that.
Yes, he was not happy with Mary doing that. But I'll send you a link. You read anything interesting, Nolan?
No, I've just been working on something lately, my New Testament thing, and then I was also just kind of spending some time trying to get back into Greek last night. So, no, nothing new. just kind of been occupying myself with like familiar territory, basically.
That's good. There you go, Evan.
There we go. I got it.
Did you find that stuff though? Speaking of which though, Luke, did you find that stuff interesting from Origin's commentary on John that I sent you a few days ago? Have you gone through that at all?
No. What did you find that stood out in that?
The stuff that he was going over about how like what it actually says in the Greek, it's a little bit more, I don't know, convoluted. Whenever Christ says in John 8 that he's talking about how Satan is the father of the lies, and that whenever the lie speaks, all that. Um,
Yeah, I remember now.
you should you should really go through those because you've already read the ones on New Advent, right? His commentary on John.
Mm-hmm.
You should go through the those extra books that we found. If I mean you haven't already, right? I haven't finished it yet.
Nope, I haven't gone through the Matthews or the Johns.
They're really good. The Matthews are pretty cool as well, but the John stuff is really insightful. I think it's very insightful.
Yeah, I'll read through it.
Anything you want to share specifically from your findings, though?
No, not necessarily. And I think that if you haven't already read through the commentary on John that he has, that's all the books that are available on New Advent, you should definitely read those first before you read these extra books that were recently translated.
Oh yes, yes. I have
I
uploaded.
did the first book. I did a audio book of that on the channel. I guess it was like a year ago now, which is crazy. But he has a lot of great stuff in there throughout all of it.
Take my heart, Lord, take all my desires. I just want to
Right
burn in the
here.
fire. Oh, so sorry.
That's unfortunate. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have much myself. Aramis and I have listened to some homilies. I've been reading Prudentius and random stuff. You know,
Yeah.
whenever you find a new writing from somebody, I scour them for the subjects that I'm most
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course. Of course. But yeah, trying to think here.
We just need more reading. That's what we need. If you've got free time, Nolan, you should read something.
There was something that I wanted you guys to cover because I've seen this happen on multiple occasions. As to how we are supposed to treat the so-called Christians and going to their assembly. I've seen people um, not understanding that the difference between um, you know not understanding the importance of heresy and going to these
Yeah,
congregations. What would you say?
for sure. Well, it's just it's most simply summarized. The entire subject is summarized best with what Paul says, that light has no fellowship with darkness. And of course, people will say in response, well, didn't Christ go to the tax collectors and everything else? And he did, but for the purpose of bringing them over from the darkness to the light. That's the end goal. And so you can interact with the darkness in that way for the purpose of converting it to light, bringing it over to good, bringing it over to yourself. But a lot of people who are engaging in that type of thing aren't actually concerned with accomplishing that kind of a goal. They'll say that as like an excuse, but they're not. They're content to just like smile and pretend like everything's fine and act like they're all the same at the end of the day. But yeah, I think it's best summarized, Raheem, in just what Paul says: light has no fellowship with darkness. The fathers are explicitly clear several times. They talk about the importance of not having fellowship with people who are either practicing sin or are heretics, and especially not to have communion with them. That's a very big deal. The communion of the heretics, to avoid that. You're told that several times. And then Paul also says in several other places, like, if you meet a guy who claims to be your brother and he's sinning or he's a heretic, he says have nothing to do with that guy. Don't even sit at the same table.
Jesus
So,
also said it, that if your brother sins, not just sins against you personally, but if he sins, go tell him in private. And if he listens to you, you've won your brother. But if he doesn't listen to you, you need to go get witnesses and talk to him about it, confront him. If he still doesn't listen to the witnesses, then you tell the church. How can you do that if the leadership in the denomination itself are practicing sin? Who are you going to go to tell about it? You're going to say, hey, listen to the early church. They have authority over you. Do you listen to them? And they'll say, we are our own authorities here. Those church fathers are all burning in hell. You think you should go to a place like that?
Of course not. But I wanted this to be on record, so like, if I'm ever presented with that question again, you can refer back to this. So yeah.
If you want to lose all of God's favor and all of his blessings on you, then go and mingle with those people. Sit side by side with them and condone them by befriending them and smiling and joking with them and laughing with them. Add to the number of their flock. Give satisfaction to their preacher in that he has another sheep that will listen to him. All that you do is take away God's favor on you. When you add to their numbers, and you destroy your own reputation too. Who's going to listen to you? You're going to this church. You put yourself under this man. Or else what do you say? Well, I don't put myself under his authority. You don't? Then challenge him. We did it. See what happens. On the one hand, you say, I want to make a difference here. And on the other hand, you admit that you're not challenging that guy. And the reason you don't challenge that pastor is because you know he'd kick you out. He'd tell you, this place probably isn't the place for you. Like they all say, it's just not the right place for you. Well, wait, aren't you guys the true church? Yes. So isn't it the place for me? Well, I just mean I don't want to defend my heresy to you. If you really love me, pastor, you try to convince me. You try to save my soul. You would not say, this just isn't the place for you. It sounds like you just want my money when you talk like that. It sounds like you just don't like people to rock the boat, but you don't have some discipleship program where you try to bring people out of heresy. You're very unloving. See, if somebody comes to us and says, if they honestly approached us, guys, the way we would approach these pastors, and they said, guys, we'd like to talk to you privately. We really think that you are in serious error, grievous error. We would say, show us. Let's see. Bring the evidence. We want to see the evidence. You understand, we would always respond the same way. But we would go in that same way to these people And they would say, this place isn't the place for you.
You know, in Hermes's new video, I think with John Lennox, him praising um, the one guy, Christopher Hitchens, yes, him singing his praise. And, you know, he made a good point. Why are you so friendly to these heretics if you admit, and if your whole position is that what they're teaching is sending people to hell, why are you so friendly? You know, again, like with what Nolan said, light has no fellowship with darkness. You can't be in those churches, you know, just sitting and bobbing your head to what the preacher is saying, knowing that everyone around you, you know, is eating this garbage and sending people to hell, basically. It should hurt you, you know. It should convict you. Should run out of there. You know, the fathers, the apostles, they were never partial towards the heretics.
And they knew that they had to have the correct response to them. They would destroy their own reputations and lose all authority if they ever once sat next to Marcion or Valentinus or Simon Magus and just had a nice laugh after the debate. Hey, that was a great debate, wasn't it? Like Alex, what's his name, did it. That guy, Voice of Reason. He went and there's this little clip of him laughing and joking with James White after their debate, you know, Catholic versus Protestant debate. If that guy's a heretic, how can you laugh with him and joke with him? Would any church father do that? Would any apostle do that? It tells you how different these times are, guys. The days of warring between the denominations are long gone. There used to be wars between these groups. They hated each other with a bitter hatred. They saw each other as the enemies of the truth. They hated each other so much, they'd kill each other. Not just the Catholics, but Protestants killed people left and right, too. They burned people at the stake. They destroyed cities. They invaded and killed people. Yeah, it's different now. We're all such pansies. Not only do people not come to blows, which, you know, they ought to be doing if they believe in just war. They believe God wants them to kill evil people. Why aren't they going to war? Why don't they wipe out their enemies? Why isn't the Catholic Church doing that? They teach that, you know. They're supposed to do that. They have a history of doing it. Why aren't they going and attacking the whole world? We all know why. It's not because they just don't agree with that doctrine anymore. It's just because they're pansies. They realize they can make much more money doing it this way now. And the same with the Protestants. If the Protestants believe the same thing, that it's just for them to fight in wars and to kill the heretics, kill evildoers, why aren't they fighting? It's because they're cowards. But we like to bring back that warring mindset, and we will say we don't see it very often. We sure don't see it very often. The true commitment to destroying the enemy, slaughtering them. We want to slaughter the enemy, spiritually speaking. We want to stab so that we might heal. We want to slay so that we can make alive. And that's the only way you can help them, is if you truly draw a line in the sand and go to war against this spiritual enemy, the devil. And if you recognize that these demons are the ones who are introducing these doctrines. It's not just men you're fighting against, it's the demons. There are a few.
It reminds me.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it reminds me of the Bible verse where it talks about we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities of darkness in Romans.
Yes. True war. It is a war. People don't treat it like that. They are just so into just doing like school debates. That's how they treat it. We're just doing a little mock debate thing for school, and we're going to post it on YouTube, but we're also going to laugh and joke with that person behind the scenes. We're friends in real life, they'll say. We're friends. Peter and Simon Max, they were actually friends in real life. The debating part's not real life. No, when you're all in with the faith, when you know this is all real and that you really are going to have a king that returns and is going to be slaying people, chopping them up, and assigning them a place with the unbelievers in hell, you don't joke around with these people. You'll make a lot more progress with people when you warn them sternly. This nonsense is going to get them killed. They will burn for eternity if they believe this garbage. They have to understand why Satan makes lies. A lie is designed to kill you. It's not something to play around with.
Don't you think it's like unbelief though, Luke? Because not believing that there is eternal fire awaiting
Yeah.
those who don't
Oh,
follow
yes.
Christ?
It's like a whole lack of a religion altogether. It's an irreligious mindset that causes people to act this way. And you know that from the fact that they're playing video games for hours and hours. You can see these people we talk to online. Fortnite or Roblox. I mean, I can't believe how many adults I see playing Roblox. Or this man we're talking to today who's in his 60s, it seems, and he's playing video games, presumably for hours a day. And what do you do with these people? They are just atheists masquerading as Christians. They really don't even know what it means to be religious in the most fundamental sense, not just a Christian. Because we would say there are pagans who are very religious. They're devoted to their religion because so much of their life revolves around their religion. But these people today are barely religious. To be religious means that you make sacrifices to your God, you fear your God, I think those are the two main things. You fear that God and you make sacrifices. You give up things out of your resources to this God, and you fight to defend your God. That's religion. To defend your religion, I mean. There's not much of that these days. Even your most staunch debaters and apologists are not that religious. And they don't really love the religion that much, or else they could not make friends with their arch nemesis. Of course, that doesn't make it impossible for us to speak in a soft or in a gentle tone of voice like I did with John the Grump today. We were gentle. He deserved to be kicked out because of how insane he was, but I was being patient for the sake of everyone. Because if you just say, get out of here, it's over. You can't really respond to the insane things. We wanted to give some responses. I wanted to give some responses to the insane things he was saying and let him keep going and say some more insane things. We can do both. We can be patient and labor over people. God gives us that prerogative, that freedom to work on some people and to be more patient with some people than others. You ever thought about that, guys? That's another way that God makes us like himself, is he puts the power to grant salvation into our hands. You realize when you walk out there and you say, I'm going to try to convert people, and you choose where to allocate your resources and your time and your effort, you are doing something that's very godlike. It's a great power that's in your hands that you choose, I'm going to work on these people. And some of those people will be saved. And because I spend my efforts there, well, other people will not be saved. So I am going to grant mercy to these people. It's a very godlike act to say, I'm going to go work on these people. I'm even going to spend an extra amount of time on these people, laboring over them, taking time away from others that I could be talking to. And I'm going to do it in the hopes that they'll convert. And maybe they will, maybe they won't. But all of us have to choose how we're going to spend our time. And I make that decision every day. If I choose to join a call, or if I choose to call with you guys, or spend time with my wife and my children. It's a big responsibility how you spend your time. You should pray for wisdom so that you don't waste it, because there is certainly there's a lot of room for wasting your time. And I've done that a lot. We've all wasted so much time. I've wasted my time talking to people I should not have wasted years of my life talking to. And that really does connect to the subject we're talking about in the beginning, which is going to these churches with the idea that you're going to help them or change them or turn the whole church's trajectory around. You got to be real with yourself. That's very unlikely. And in order to do so, you'd have to compromise on your own morals. You'd have to be corrupted. You'd have to be silent for a lot of it. When you hear that pastor saying the most disgusting things and twisting the scriptures or slandering the apostles, you just have to sit there silently and let him do it. Or if you do call him out, it's over. You're not going to be welcome there anymore. But those are your two options.
They're gonna remove you, that's for sure.
We've been removed from churches. They've grabbed us physically. I've been pushed out of the church.
Really?
Oh, yeah, of course. Only a handful of times did it ever come to that, but of course it's happened.
I think it just takes, yeah, I mean, yeah, it takes wisdom definitely to discern these things. And I definitely agree, we should pray for wisdom. They, from listening to the the philosophers, someone like Seneca, um, listening to his book on the shortness of life, and from my own, from what the church fathers say as well, what Christ teaches, upon like the shortness of this time, and when he's even saying, live every day like it's you. This is the only day you have. He says, don't worry about tomorrow and such. And you know, listening to again like Seneca, what he says in the shortness of life, is very convicting because our time is the most valuable thing that we have, but for some reason we treat it like it's abundant. Like yeah, we're stingy with our other resources like wealth, but with time, we for some reason we treat it as if it's just comes from a never-ending source. Like we have just like billions and billions of years, so we can just waste all of it. And I'm definitely rebuking myself, right? Time time management. That's something that I'm definitely working on to improve because there's a lot of hours in a day, even though we might say you know oh, it's already night. But if you think about it, if you were very productive for the day, if you set out to do a task, maybe you said, all right, I'm going to read 30 chapters today. You'll find that when you've read those 30 chapters, you still have much more time in the day. So it's like, what do I do with this time? And that's like the question that I guess I have. And, obviously, the answer. You seek out something else to do that is profitable. But like with any other resource, we contemplate how to use it. And I think it's very good to contemplate how to use the resource of time.
I think you make wise observations, Raheem. I never did watch. Well, I didn't watch many of those Seneca videos when you guys were posting them the other day, but it's amazing the wisdom that the ancients had. At least those ancient men who would actually sit and think and engage in using the logos that was given them. And it's just sad how many people today call that old pagan philosophy. Like, oh, he was using his logos. He was using his logos. He's a pagan. I know they were mostly pagans, but just to be reasoning, to use logic, is not automatically pagan.
Right. You know, they, you know, the the philosophers, one like Seneca, you know, Tertullian says we often find him on our side, and when you listen to what he says, you you, you understand why Tertullian said what he said. These men, the philosophers, you know, even though people give them a lot of flack saying, "Oh, you know, they're pagans," these men were very self-controlled. Um, if you would compare them to the regular Christian nowadays, it would you know, you'd be wondering, right, who is a more of a follower of Christ in their actions. Because these men were very self-controlled, something that, you know, I wish to obtain. Um, it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
I especially like how Seneca writes. Uh, kind of like Tertullian. Kind of like Tertullian, the way he speaks. Because I guess like they're both masters in the arts, reasoning. So
Yes, they're very witty and very funny.
did you did you see the quote from Tertullian, in his Pallium, how he was boasting about philosophy, like, oh, he's a master in these arts.
No, I don't.
Ah,
You can post it if you know where it is.
I'd have to get the chapter, but there it is. So
Want me to read all this here?
yeah,
Tertullian.
it's all good.
With speech, says my antagonist, you've tried to persuade me, a most sage medicine. But albeit utterance be mute, impeded by infancy, or else checked by bashfulness, for life is content with even tongueless philosophy, my very cut is eloquent. A philosopher, in fact, is heard so long as he is seen. My very sight puts vices to the blush. Who suffers not when he sees his own rival? Who can bear to gaze ocularly at him at whom mentally he cannot stand? Grand is the benefit conferred by the mantle, at the thought whereof moral improbity absolutely blushes. Let philosophy now see to the question of her own profitableness, for she is not the only associate whom I boast. Other scientific arts of public utility I boast. From my store are clothed the first teacher of the forms of letters, the first explainer of their sounds, the first trainer in the rudiments of arithmetic, the grammarian, the rhetorician, the sophist, the medical man, the poet, the musical time beater. What? The musical time beater. The astrologer and the bird gazer. All that is liberal in studies is covered by my four angles. True, but all these rank lower than Roman knights. Well, but your gladiatorial trainers and all their ignominious following are conducted into the arena in togas. This, no doubt, will be the indignity implied in from gown to mantle. Well, so speaks the mantle, but I confer on it likewise a fellowship with the divine sect and discipline. Joy, mantle, and exult. A better philosophy has now deigned to honor you ever since you have begun to be a Christian's vesture. So he's talking about his mantle, the philosopher's mantle.
He's saying you don't have a better philosophy. If you're a philosopher, join the true philosophy. Just upgrade.
Mm-hmm. Wow, Tertullian was really high class then, wasn't he? A medical man?
Nolan, are you there?
He's got the music, the musical time beater. That just means he can keep the beat with his hand. I guess he's actually implying he is some kind of conductor for music.
You know,
I know. I don't think he's talking about beating drums, Aramis. They call that the time beater. To keep time means a whole bunch of people are either singing or playing instruments, and you are using your hand to make a motion as a conductor. That's what he does with his little stick. And you keep everybody on the beat. And the people all, instead of looking to each other to keep the time, they all keep their eyes on the conductor, and he keeps the beat with his hand. Going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and he's using his finger or whatever.
Yeah, Nolan, who did you compare Tertullian to again? With with his Latin, how sophisticated it was.
Cicero.
I've heard from some people that he's as good as Cicero from some people, but curiously, it was not Victorinus, but there was somebody who said Victorinus says that he was a great writer, but somebody else in like the 300s says that Tertullian's Latin was lousy. So I don't know what that guy's problem was.
Really?
Who was it again? Yeah. Yeah, he says that it was somebody in the 300s. I think it might have been it might be the same guy who attacked Origen, Methodius,
Oh
maybe. I
no,
think Methodius. I think
that's hilarious.
It might be Methodius. I can't remember who it was specifically, but somebody did say that his Latin was lousy, and I was surprised to hear that because I've always heard from people that he had really good Latin and that he was a very talented writer. But yeah, Victorinus says that he was a highly educated man and like knew all of philosophy. He had a great education.
If you're ever going to make that Tertullian video, the other Tertullian video, I think this is definitely one of the best quotes.
Another Tertullian video? What? Defending what exactly?
If I remember, I mean, I think Nolan is the best one to explain the idea behind that video.
I think the one we've got will do for now.
Yeah,
Nolan is not
I think it
opposed
wasn't.
to making a new and improved or just adding things over time.
No, I don't think this one was specifically the one I'm referring to was about Tertullian. It was, I think it was about how, like, philosophy in general, like how should we view it? And I think that was like a section he had. I'm not sure, but he told me about it once.
That was never at any point going to be in the Tertullian video, Raheem. That's going to be its own separate video at some point in the future.
Yeah, I know.
But that I never intended for that to be in the video. I intended for that to be a separate video in the future.
Well, that video that you're talking about, it's not only Tertullian, right?
No, it's going to be a big video. It's going to mainly be like Tertullian is the impetus of the video because people love to use that section from him where he says, what does Jerusalem have to do with Athens, guys? Come on. And they love to take that when he was heated and like make it like, okay, now we can't ever appeal to philosophy at any time. We can't be aware of philosophy. You can never cite philosophy because it has nothing to do with Jerusalem, right? Well, if that's the way that you understand him, as I've said before, you not only make him disagree with the rest of the church fathers, you not only like make him opposed to them, you also make him opposed to Paul, you make him opposed to the apostle, and then you also make him opposed to himself because he frequently appeals to the philosophers. So, but you saw, I think you guys remember, we had that one guy join, and he was in the general. This was before we had the vetting area. And what did that guy say? He said, I don't care. I'm fine with making him contradict himself. What a lousy response.
John, the Syrian, and Yvonne, how are you guys doing? I don't know if you're able to call, but oh yeah, John, you're working. That's good. I'm proud of you for working. But I hope you guys are well. I got you. I know Stephen was saying he wanted to introduce some people to us. Yeah, I would love it if Stephen would bring some more Anabaptists to us. I think Stephen is the first Anabaptist that we've had come to us. Come to the church. Very satisfying to see because they're a real piece of work, the Anabaptists. So it is good to see people come out of it. I hope to see more. Nolan, you remember in the book of Yasher it says that when Lot's wife turned into a pillar of salt, that the animals came and would lick the salt. And I thought some other church father talked about this, but I can't find any. And maybe we will find some more, but I've suggested that Lot's wife turning into a pillar of salt is a symbol of the church after it had escaped Sodom and Gomorrah, escaped all the evils of the world. It turned back and it missed. It was nostalgic about its old life, and the church fell away. But when the church fell away, it didn't just get completely annihilated. Instead, it became this permanent monument that was fixed in the ground for other people to encounter. And I thought, this is so symbolic. If the animals really did come and lick this salt, then that would symbolize the nations coming and still being able to be nourished by the church, despite the fact that the church has fallen or has fallen away. And if anybody doubts that that pillar is the church, I would just say, you know that the scriptures say the church is the pillar and foundation of the truth. The church is called a pillar. And although there's a symbolic meaning in Lot, and that Lot symbolizes the law, as Origen pointed out, he also represents Christ, I think, because Christ also was veiled. That's what Lot's name means. Anyway, I think it's a picture of the church becoming this permanent monument that others can be nourished from. But anyway, I was reading Prudentius, Nolan, this guy in the late 300s, early 400s, and he just casually mentions it, that the pillar of salt had animals coming and licking at it. Found that interesting. So
I honestly don't remember that, to tell you the truth. I must have forgot.
Yeah, there has to be some kind of tradition about this. Yeah, it's right here. Here, I'll share screens. I'll read you Prudentius. He's a Latin writer. But he says this. He says, he says, let no one think of Sodom, which is the prefigure of the burning of the world, and when once he has stepped from the walls, turn his face back to look upon the death of all things. Lot, being wise, obeyed the warning, but his light-minded wife, with unsteady purpose, like a woman, turned her thoughts backwards, and, hearing the call of her dear Sodom, cleaved to it. Eve had drawn her husband into partnership in an accursed fault, but this woman, by her sin, brought death on herself alone. She stiffened in a solid mass of wasting stone, turned into a soluble rock. She stands there a woman still, as she had stood before, preserving every detail, modeled in a pillar of salt that has long borne her image, her graceful form, her dress, brow and eyes and hair, her face turned to look behind, the chin carried slightly backwards, a stiff memorial of an ancient sin. Her wet figure dissolves indeed in salt sweats, but she suffers no loss to her full form from the waste that drips away, and however much the cattle wear away the savory rock, there is always as much moisture for them to lick, and she grows again with skin that is rubbed off and lost. Such is the memorial statue earned by a woman who sinned, for she let her weak, unstable resolution melt away in slippery courses and had no firm constancy to keep heaven's commands. So I know I've heard some other church father mention this, that the animals of the earth used to come and lick this pillar. But so far, I have the Book of Yasher, and then I randomly came across Prudentius. So if anybody does find that quote, or if you want to do a word search for it, maybe you could look up, pillar and salt. I mean, I might be able to do it right now, actually. But if you find it, I would appreciate some of those quotes, because I will add it to my list of church fathers. Because I have a very few number of church fathers who say that Lot's wife symbolizes the church.
Irenaeus, do you have Irenaeus?
Does he say it? Give me some Irenaeus. All right, well, maybe Aramis can do this a lot faster than I can. But there is no getting around it, guys. I mean, the scriptures say the church is the pillar and ground of the truth. Here is the wife. She's turned into salt. Jesus even says, you are the light of the world. You're the salt of the earth. The church is supposed to be salt. And I know Jerome was talking about it. He says, do you know what it means when he says, if the salt becomes tasteless, with what will it be made salty again? He was saying, if even the teachers in the church, you apostles and the bishops, if even they lose their savor, well, who's gonna help them become righteous again? Because they're the ones that are supposed to be bringing other people to repentance. So if they lose their saltiness, if they become dull, then the church is lost. Maybe I can get Jerome saying that. Here, let me see what you sent me, Aramis.
This is symbolic, Luke, because people they call it ancient salt now. They buy it. It's a better form of salt. Because like the modern salt is so much inferior.
Yeah, here's Jerome. He says, you are the salt of the earth. The apostles are called salt because, am I sharing screens? The apostles are called salt because through them the entire human race is seasoned. But if the salt loses its strength, by what shall it be salted? If a teacher errs, by what other teacher shall he be corrected? It is no longer of any use except that he be thrown out and trampled by men. The example has been taken from agriculture, for salt is necessary as a condiment on foods and for drying meat. It has no other use. Of course, we read in the scriptures that enraged conquerors sowed certain cities with salt so that no sprout would arise in them. So then let teachers and bishops beware and see that the mighty endure torments mightily. There is no remedy for them, but the downfall of the great leads to Tartarus. So he's saying that this salt metaphor applies to the teachers in the church. And so what does this symbolize, guys? That the wife of Christ, the church, she has turned into a pillar of salt. She died, so to speak, and yet she lives on perpetually in this symbol of a pillar that is still visible, and people can go to it and get salt from it.
I finally found it when you were looking for all this time. Remember you said you looked for something where this is some exchange the appearance of Christ to be like him?
Yeah, who is it?
Irenaeus.
Where?
Irenaeus.
You found
I
it?
found
I
it.
knew it existed.
Yes, we got it.
This kind of thing drives me crazy. You ever look for a quote? It
We
drives you
got it,
crazy for
boys.
like a year or two.
All right, look, read it.
I knew we had a
Yes.
quote from Irenaeus. Saturnus, a Gnostic teacher, presented it as a truth that the Savior was without birth, without body, and without form. Rather, he only appeared to be a visible man. Saturnus asserted that the God of the Jews was one of the angels. It was for this reason that Christ came to destroy the God of the Jews, because all the powers wished to destroy his Father. This heretic was the first to declare that two kinds of men were created by the angels, one kind who are wicked and the other who are good. Furthermore, he did not suffer death himself. Rather, Simon, a certain man of Cyrene, under compulsion, carried his cross in his place. Now Jesus changed the appearance of this Simon so that everyone would think he was Jesus. Through ignorance and error, Simon was crucified, while Jesus himself took on the form of Simon and stood by and laughed at everyone. See, I knew it, guys. I've been trying to find this quote. This is where the Muslims got their idea. They got it from this Gnostic group. Well, thank you, Aramis. You have done me a favor. All right, here's another one from Irenaeus on the Pillar of Salt. This is Irenaeus. The church is the salt of the earth. It has been left behind within the confines of the earth, and it is subject to human suffering. And even though entire members are often taken away from it, the pillar of salt still endures. This typifies the foundation of the faith that makes Christians strong and sends children towards their Father. But what Irenaeus obviously didn't know was that the church would really, the whole thing would fall. He is seeing it as, well, some of the members of the church fall, but see, it ended up being much worse than that. It ended up being fulfilled as the whole church, that whole woman being turned into the pillar of salt. But isn't that great, guys? We even have Ante-Nicene fathers as famous as Irenaeus. I mean, who is more famous and great than Irenaeus, besides like Clement or Ignatius? I mean, Irenaeus is hard to beat, and he says this is a prophecy of the church. So we're not crazy to make this comparison. Nobody can say we invented this. This is an analogy of the church falling away. Irenaeus saw it as partial church falling away, but we realized it is the whole church. And Nolan, I know I'm not against our beloved origin. You know this about me, but Lot does symbolize Jesus. And in the same way that you had the Sadducees and the Pharisees, I think that Jesus now is forced by these two daughters, these foolish daughters. They cause Jesus to conceive children that he does not recognize, and that would be the Catholics and the Orthodox.
I don't know. I can't imagine that. I can't even see that.
I can. You want to know why?
You know what? Do you know what Lot's name means, by the way?
Veiled. It's Jesus.
Oh, please. Jesus hasn't been veiled for 2,000 years. He was veiled for like a couple decades.
Neither has Moses.
Oh, my goodness.
They
Luke,
both
it's
were
about
veiled.
The law.
It's both. They were both veiled and they were both unveiled. Even Moses with a veil on his face represents Jesus. Wait.
You do this
wait
with
a second.
Moses as
Hey,
well.
wait
You
a
do
second.
this with Moses.
Hey, wait a second. Did Moses represent Jesus when he had a veil on his face? I got you.
No, he represented the law.
So you deny
Moses
this?
represented the
Are
law.
you ready for a bunch of church fathers saying Moses represents Christ with the veil? He covers his
I think
glory.
Samson represents Christ in that respect.
They all do. Even Moses, even Lot, every single one of them represents Jesus.
Here's the thing. Moses can sometimes sort of, even his origin admits, and I said this last night when we were reading the homilies.
Because you couldn't get out of it. Moses does represent
Moses
Jesus.
can sometimes, he does not represent Jesus. He can sometimes represent Jesus. He usually represents the law. Everybody knows this.
We've got a double fulfillment of every prophecy. It applies to the Jews, and then it applies again to the Christians. Double fulfillment in everything.
Well, I think everybody who attended that call last night read it. They heard it for themselves. They saw it with their own eyes, what the fathers have to say about Moses. We could come up with something a little bit different if we wanted to, but I think it's pretty clear that Moses represents the law.
Yeah, it said
9 out of
Moses
10
was
times.
killed, right?
Yeah, Moses died, and then Jesus takes command. The law is dead.
And yet Moses also represents Jesus.
Sometimes.
You'll come around, Nolan, after I make my presentation. I don't mind if you take a little while. I think Justin Martyr, maybe he has the quotes on the animals licking the salt. We gotta find it. I know I've got more.
It's not in his dialogue, which I thought. That's what I thought.
Animals
But
the King's song?
Hmm. Thank you, Aramis. You are my helper. But why? Why can't Berceau put proper references?
Well, he does. You got if you got the book. You want to go find that reference?
Nah, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
I could open up the PDF as I'm doing this and actually tell you where it's from.
It's gonna be okay. All right, never mind. Find it. Because Berceau even changes the words. This is one of the annoying things about looking up quotes from David, is that he changes the words. But I will at least go ahead and add to our Simon Magus article this quote. It's been eluding me. You guys expect me to keep this conversation going. Nobody has anything. Nobody. Speak, say something.
Oh, I can speak. Yeah, guys, I'm doing research on just the philosophers around the world, and you guys will be surprised at how many of them are very Christ-like in their behavior. I've also discussed this with Nolan as well. Like, if you guys read some of Socrates' writings, not all of them, it's almost like reading a church father writing. When he talks about how this philosophy of not doing harm to any man is very rare. Only a small percentage of people actually follow this through. Um, there's also this Chinese philosopher named Mozi, however it's pronounced, and he's also all about brotherhood and peace for all mankind. And he encouraged peace, and he actually prevented wars, guys, through his clever actions. So I do think there is value in reading the philosophers. I think there's great value because you realize how this all works. Because there are many people, guys, who think that Christianity is like some sort of evolution of Plato. Like they think Christianity, like Platonism, just evolved into Christianity, where they don't realize how things actually work, guys. That God allows humans through their own free will to grow and increase in virtue, reason, understanding, and then at the right time, when humanity had grown up enough, is when Christ appears. And one of the main reasons, guys, why God gives mankind marriage and being able to have children is to be like God. And I'm making a video right now, guys, on marriage as well to explain these concepts. But essentially, guys, one of the best reasons to get married is to be like God. By becoming a husband and a father, you become literally more godlike in your mind, in the way you see things. So when you realize how you have to train children properly, right? There are two extremes when it comes to having children. You can either beat them senselessly, and that's bad, or you can just do nothing to them, and that's also bad for different reasons, right? They're both different types of neglect. They're both different types of not doing your duty properly, right? So you realize how God operates. God walks this fine line between, giving the children time to make mistakes, but also not letting them go too far in their mistakes, where it becomes too extreme. And so uh, you realize that children have to make mistakes, guys. One of the things that my family never did to me, they never allowed me to make really mistakes. I never had a fleshly father. He was missing from day one. But I did have an uncle. And the way it would work with him, when he would ask for my help to do something, and I would come over and try to help him, but then when I made a mistake, he just says, never mind, you don't know what you're doing, go away. So I was never given a chance to learn, make mistakes, kind of figure things out. So I became a very useless adult, and I still have to deal with that burden of being a useless adult. So, so that's one extreme, is just not letting the kids do anything, make any mistakes. The other extreme is that you just beat on your kids, or you rule in a very kind of authoritarian way where you give your kids no freedom, and you're just like, do this right now. If you don't do it, I'm going to get my belt. And you make your kids you make your kids very afraid. You make your kids very contentious because your kids don't know what is wrong, what is right. And so if you just always beat your kids, they just learn that the rules are very arbitrary. And they learn to hate authority, guys. You ruin their relationship with God because the way they see you is the way they start to see God. This arbitrary authority figure who can be calm one day and then beat you the next day, even though they're doing the same thing. So when you spank your kids, you have to be consistent. You have to set down consistent rules for them. You cannot be arbitrary in your punishments. Otherwise, they will think that God is arbitrary. And when you live a life of arbitrariness, when everything is arbitrary, you have no security. You don't know what's right, what's wrong. You're afraid to do the right thing because you maybe get beaten for it. So you don't know what's right, what's wrong, and so you're always like insecure about what's right and what's wrong. And that produces a horrible fear and a horrible debilitating effect where you're even afraid of doing the right thing because you're afraid of getting beaten for it. And so that's a horrible thing as well. And I don't know if you guys have seen the Christopher Hitchens video, but I'm making a part two of that as well. And I read a part of his book that he wrote, his memoir, his biography about himself. And he went to a brutal British boarding school where they would just always beat the kids constantly, and there was, of course, sexual abuse there. But it produced a very deep hatred of authority, guys. So I want you guys to understand, if you don't properly discipline your kids, you're also destroying their souls. You're making them see God in a bad way. And that's perhaps even worse than them seeing you in a bad way. They start to see God in a bad way. And they can become like Christopher Hitchens, these popular atheists that destroy religion and attack it. So I just want you guys to understand the consequences of having kids is that you can produce people who grow up to become these monsters. We don't realize, guys, but your kids could become very influential at some point. You could produce a whole tribe of people in a few hundred years. And so the bad mistakes you make as a father, guys, can have these long-lasting consequences. That's what you need to realize. If you're going to have kids, you got to dedicate your life to them, guys. They cannot be like a side project. They have to be your main focus because there could be catastrophic consequences of failing to raise your kids properly, guys. As it says in scripture, Ishmael, uh, God tells him he will be a wild ass of a man. And everyone will be against him. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand will be against him, guys. And guess what? That continues to this day, guys. Ishmael's descendants are still causing a lot of conflict in the world, So definitely, guys, be aware of that. Your kids have to be number one in your life because you're raising a tribe of people who may live on for hundreds of years. And whatever lessons you teach them, that's what they're going to be known for. So, yeah, Luke, I managed to keep the conversation. Come
Oh,
on, come
you
on
gave
back,
me a
Luke.
great idea. See, I actually try to think of subjects when I'm listening. Guys, listen to this quote we got from Chrysostom on Sunday. We were reading Chrysostom. He had so many great quotes on female modesty. But can I find it?
Yes, guys. Chrysostom has a little document. I don't know if you guys have this by now. It's like his homilies on marriage, which is a compilation of 5 of his homilies, guys. And everyone who's thinking about marriage should read that. It's worth its weight in gold, as Jerome would say.
Check this out. Listen to these quotes from John Chrysostom that we collected yesterday that I have not added. I'll add them to the veiling section. Anyway, John Chrysostom says this. He says, nowadays, in contrast to how it ought to be, he says, nowadays, on the day of a wedding, people dance and sing hymns to Aphrodite, songs full of adultery, corruption of marriages, illicit loves, unlawful unions, and many other impious and shameful things. They accompany the bride in public with unseemly drunkenness and shameful speeches. How can you expect chastity of her, tell me, if you accustom her to such shamelessness from the first day, if you present in her sight such actions and words as even the more serious slaves should not hear? For such a long time her father had striven along with her mother to protect the virgin, to keep her from speaking or hearing any of these words. He has arranged for private chambers. So he's saying the father has arranged for private chambers, women's apartments, guards, doors, and locks. He has allowed her to go out only in the evening, to be seen only by members of the family. Have you overthrown all these precautions in one day, teaching her shamelessness by that disgraceful retinue, and introducing corrupt thoughts into the soul of the bride? Do not the subsequent evils begin here? Is not this the beginning of childlessness and widowhood and untimely orphanhood? I know that some people think I am burdensome and difficult, giving advice like this and uprooting ancient custom, but I do not care at all about their objections. I do not seek your favor, but your benefit. I do not ask for the applause of praise, but the profit of wisdom. Let no one tell me that this is the custom. When sin is boldly committed, forget about custom. If evil things are done, even if the custom is ancient, abolish them. If they are not evil, even if they are not customary, introduce them and establish them. Actually, it was not an ancient custom to celebrate weddings in a disgraceful way, but some kind of innovation. Consider how Isaac married Rebekah, how Jacob married Rachel. Scripture tells us of these weddings and how these brides entered the households of their bridegrooms. Nothing is said about such customs. He's talking about the custom of leading them through the streets and all the rowdy, loud noises. And then he says, but no one in the city has done this modest custom, you say. Why don't you hurry to be the founder of this good custom, so that posterity may attribute it to you? If anyone envies or imitates this custom, your descendants will be able to say to inquirers that you first introduced this practice. So he's saying, if you feel embarrassed about going back to the ancient ways because nobody in your city has this custom, he says, well, then why don't you hurry to be the founder of it so that all the people in the future will attribute this custom to you? And they'll say, actually, Brian, he brought back veiling in my town. It didn't exist for 100 or 200 years. He brought it back. And I never even thought about this, but Chrysostom is absolutely right. Why are not we all striving for that? Do you realize how much credit you will get in heaven if you bring back the ancient customs that have been lost in the last century or two or longer? There's a great reward lying in store for that person. And why did no one leave? See, he left just as I was reading the good quotes. He always does that. Well, this is what we do. We add the quotes. We sit here, guys, silently. And that's what you're observing right now. You're observing us sitting here. You're watching us do what we do when we're not in calls. And this isn't entertaining. You don't want to watch this. You're distracting me. You're not saying anything. There's no sense in this. I'm going to stop sharing, and I will head off and be a productive Luke with Aramis, and we'll all see each other again. Okay?
Okay.
It was
I
nice,
see. I
nice
see
seeing
how
you.
it is.
Yeah, I love you guys. We got to be productive. It's 9:00.
All right, God bless, Luke.
Farewell,
God
everybody.
bless.
God be with you, Isaiah. Bye for now.